Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be filming what is, in my opinion, the best, most exciting video of the year here on my channel, and I'm going to be telling you about all of my favourite reads of 2018. So this year I managed to read a total of 70 books. The type of book that I read the most of was literary fiction, which isn't really a surprise, is it? I also read quite a lot of classics and poetry collections, historical fiction and children's fiction, which also isn't that much of a surprise. I think that's pretty representative of my reading tastes. But more surprisingly, I also managed to read a few non-fiction books, some graphic novels and some young adult books as well, which I was really happy with. Overall, I'd say I had a really good reading year this year. I definitely read quite a lot by my standards, so that's nice. And I tried out some new genres I wouldn't normally read, so that's really great. And I also found some really fantastic books this year that are probably going to become long-time favourites. I also definitely read some really shit books this year, but that's a whole other video. I will link down below my worst books of 2018 video if you want to go over and learn about the other side of my reading this year after you've watched this video. I would recommend. So in this video, I'm going to be telling you about my 6 favourite reads of the year. 6 is just an arbitrary number, they're just the ones that stood out to me the most for whatever reason, and I will be talking about them in a vague order of me working up to my absolute favourites at the end. I'm excited. So the first book that I'm going to talk about in this video that I absolutely loved is A Book of American Martyrs by Joyce Carol Oates. This is a contemporary literary fiction family saga type novel. So this novel tells a story of 2 families who are living in modern day America who are very different from one another but become irreversibly connected at the outset of the novel when Luther Dunphy, who is an ardent evangelical, shoots and kills an abortion doctor in a small town in Ohio. The novel then follows different members of both of these families over many years that precede this event. So this book, unlike some of the others on this list, wasn't perfect in my eyes, but there was so much about it that I loved and it did so well. So many things that I love in contemporary literary fiction, which is my favourite genre of novel, that it just had to be in this list. The storyline and the structuring of this novel is absolutely perfect for me. I love that it's a massive tome of a novel and it spans many, many years, and you really get to see the events that happen in a lot of detail. I love that it's very observant and character focused rather than being plot driven and having like page turning twists, because I love getting to know characters really well and seeing how they develop over many years. In terms of the storyline, I was so hooked right from the offset that the catalyst that kind of happens at the beginning of this book centres around an ethical debate, namely that of abortion and reproductive freedom. I love an ethical debate. A large part of my degree focused on applied ethics, and so I absolutely love it when books kind of generally explore these themes in their stories. And to be honest, I just love reading books that generally look at different people living in different circumstances who have different beliefs and views on different topics. I think that's so interesting and really important to read about. So being the focus of this novel, Joyce Carol Oates definitely thought out her characters really, really well. We get to see from the perspective of lots of different family members from both of the families who are involved in this event at the beginning of the novel. And that's really interesting because it means we get to see the catalyst event from lots of different perspectives, and we get to see the way that it affected lots of different people's lives over many years. I thought that was really clever and really interesting, and I thought that every single perspective in this book was really interesting and had something really unique and valuable to offer. I just think this is a fantastic novel that, while it is clearly very timely and discusses themes which are very relevant to the world we live in today, I also thought it was really timeless because it seems to explore wider, more general themes of the values that we hold and fear and violence and ultimately family. If you love excellently written literary fiction, then you should read this. If you want to read some fiction that is very relevant to the world a lot of us are living in today in the Western world, then you should read this. And also if you just want a really engrossing, chunky read, then you really can't go wrong. I absolutely love Joyce Carol Oates after reading this book. She is definitely an author for me, and I'll definitely be reading more of her work in the future. So the next book that is definitely one of my favourites of the year is actually a poetry collection, and that is Don't Call Us Dead by Danez Smith. So 2018 was a brilliant year for reading poetry for me. I probably read the most poetry that I've ever read in my life in a year before, and I definitely read some of the best poetry I've ever read. This one definitely being a standout. This is a contemporary poetry collection that discusses many of the issues that are at the heart of modern day America, and it explores themes of race and violence and sexuality and illness, among other things. Like a book of American Martyrs, this collection is so timely. It is written today for today. It definitely explores a lot of issues that are facing a lot of people today, and it does that so well. It is so unflinching about what it is to be a gay black man in America, what it is to be HIV positive, what it is to experience racism and police brutality. The poetry in here just paints such striking images that really transported me into these other people's lives. I really felt like I could experience the things that other people are experiencing that I'm never going to experience firsthand myself. And I think that's just the most amazing and important thing about good literature, really. As well as exploring all these themes so powerfully, the writing and the technical craftsmanship in this poetry collection is so incredibly impressive. The language choices are gorgeous, and the imagery is so vivid it will stop you in your tracks. And the rhythm that Danez Smith creates makes the poetry so great to read out loud. The reading experience of this collection was truly stunning for me. There's so much intelligence in here and so much passion and rage. It really blew me away and it taught me a lot. So I want to read you a couple of poems from here to really give you a sense of what the poetry's like, and I think you're going to love it. So this is a bit from At the Down Low House Party. We say what's good, meaning I could love you until my jaw is but memory. We say yo, meaning let my body be a falcon's talon and your body be the soft innards of goats. But we mostly say nothing, just sip some good brown, trying to get drunk with permission. Sometime between here and being straight again, some sweet-boned, glittering boy shows up, starts voguing and shit. His sharp hips pierce our desire, makes our mouths water, and we call him faggot, meaning bravery. Faggot, meaning often dream of you, flesh damp and confused for mine. Faggot, meaning hail the queen, hail the queen. Faggot, meaning I've been waiting ages to dance with you. And here's a little bit from Summer Somewhere. The forest is a flock of boys who never got to grow up, blooming into forever, afros like maple crowns, reaching sap slow towards the sky. Watch forest run in the rain, branches melting into soft paper curls, duck under the mountain for shelter. Watch the mountain reveal itself a boy. Watch mountain and forest playing in the rain. Watch the rain melt everything into a boy with brown eyes and wet naps. The lake turns into a boy in the rain, the swamp, a boy in the rain, the fields of lavender, brothers dancing between the storm. If that didn't convince you to read this poetry collection, then I don't know what will. The next book that I'm going to talk about is another literary fiction novel, and this is one that I read really early on in the year, and I really loved it at the time, and I still feel just as strongly about it now, and that is Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. So this novel is set in a very placid and organised little town called Shaker Heights, and it follows mainly the wealthy Richardson family who perfectly embody the town in which they live, and the enigmatic single mum and her daughter who they rent a house to. There is also a secondary storyline in the novel following some friends of the Richardsons who are in a custody battle trying to adopt a Chinese American baby. This novel explores most primarily themes of motherhood and family generally, and also cultural identity. And these themes crop up in both of the storylines in the novel in many different obvious and also lots of different subtle ways, and I absolutely loved all of the different ways and all of the different angles at which Celeste Ng came at these topics. By far the best thing that this novel has to offer is its incredible insight into the complexities of human relationships, So I found all of the characters in this novel to be so interesting and so unique, and all of the relationships between them were really complex and really believable. I thought that Celestine really took into consideration all of the different factors that would affect their relationships, and they were all just drawn so well. Celestine is such a perceptive writer when it comes to family bonds and strains, but also things like socioeconomic status and privilege, and all of the things that can constitute one's identity. I just thought this novel was so great. It was so well-rounded. It had so many incredible insights and thought-provoking elements to it. But it also just is a really, really good, addictive and engaging story. It will have you turning the pages all the time. And you can also play a game while you're reading of counting how many times fire comes up, both metaphorically and literally. I just fell in love with Celestine when I read this novel. I went on to read her other novel, Everything I Never Told You, straight away after it, which I also really loved, though not as much as this one. And I just can't wait to see what else she brings out in the future. That is a proof copy I will be requesting for sure. I just think she's so fab, and I would urge everyone to read this book, especially if you're wanting to get into reading more literary fiction or adult fiction and you're not really sure where to start. I think this would be perfect. There's just such a great readability to it, but there's no quality lost. I think so many people would enjoy this as much as me. The next book that I'm going to talk about is actually another poetry collection. I told you this year had been good for poetry reading for me, and that is Spacecraft by John McCullough. So this one explores many different aspects of life and love and human relationships, a central part of the collection exploring John McCullough's relationship with his first partner and this partner's death from an AIDS-related illness. This collection has so many amazing elements to it. Basically, all of the ingredients for a perfect poetry collection, in my opinion. It has cleverly intricate wordplay and emotional depth, discussion of contemporary and timeless topics, and gorgeous imagery. The poems in this collection are so emotionally insightful and struck me as being really truthful and relatable, even though I hadn't experienced a lot of the things that John McCullough has. Themes explored generally in this collection include the different relationships that people have with one another, communication and memory, and I love reflecting on all of those themes, and I think that this was definitely a really great medium to do so in. The wordplay in this collection has to be some of the most impressive writing I have ever read. John McCullough just uses words so cleverly to create so many different layers of meaning in his poems. So the poems have a very soft first impression, I think, both in terms of the imagery they create and the sounds, but they're also very striking, and I had so much fun picking them apart over and over and over again to just find more meaning in them. John McCullough also clearly has a passion for the etymology of words, and that added such a fun and unique twist to the poetry collection, I think. So for example, some of the poems might be centering around a word that's gone out of usage that not many people have heard of, or a word that is not in common usage and has a really niche meaning. I love how all of the poems in this collection can be read on their own and they're beautiful, but they also come together as such an amazing collection when you read them all together. And I think that's really what tied this collection off so perfectly for me. Just that everything on every single layer of these poems in this collection is so wonderfully well crafted. It's just more impressive than I can say. So once again, like with the last poetry collection, I do just want to read you some of it really quickly. I think that's the best way for you to get a sense of what the collection is like, and I just want to read it because I love it. So I'm going to read Brooms, which is definitely one of my favourites from the collection. There it was again, the softness of your voice, the cushioned spaces of its hesitance, that constant search for the right way to question yourself. We'd met on Hove Prom by luck. You talked and I rested in your little rooms. So much sky, so many wanderers, we were already in a dream. Now I walk past beach huts, backwash, with no chance of stumbling into you again. There is only the silence of the clouds, the air between shuffled pebbles, the gaps I listen for inside the rain. This collection is so intimate and so poignant. I'm sure I'm going to reread it over and over again in my lifetime and get more out of it every time. I just honestly think this is so special. And the penultimate book that I'm going to be talking about in this video, which I love so much, is The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. So as a lot of you probably already know, this is a children's book that follows a young girl called Mary Lennox who moves to England from India after the death of her parents. Mary goes to live in an old manor in the Yorkshire Dales that is owned by her uncle, and here she finds the secret garden and lots of other secrets about her family as well. So I read this book for Booktubeathon this year and I absolutely loved it. You know when you just read something at the right time and everything just comes together perfectly? Well, that's definitely what happened for this book. So I have this lovely illustrated copy that I've had since I was young, so that was gorgeous to read. And I also spent a lot of time reading this outside in the garden, which obviously was perfect. This book ticked all of the boxes that I wanted it to, every single one. It was just amazing. So to start with, the storyline is so charming and magical and intriguing. It had me hooked all of the way through, even though I already knew what happened because I've seen the film many times. And the writing is so beautiful. It's the perfect balance between being simple and accessible for children, but also being so descriptive and graceful and lovely in places as well. You could just tell that every single word in here was so special and was so specifically chosen. I also loved all of the characters in this novel. All of the side characters were so great and so lovable in their own way. But Mary was the best. I mean, to begin with, the way that childhood experiences and emotions were depicted through Mary was so spot on. But also just the amount of character development that she goes through in this novel was so impressive and really believable, I felt. At the beginning of the novel, Mary starts off as quite a stubborn and selfish and just not a very nice young girl. But as the novel goes on and she learns more about her family and makes new friends, she becomes so much more selfless and open-minded and generous. And I think there's probably a lot of people out there who could learn from Mary, and not just children. There's not much more to say about this one, I don't think, other than I just loved it so much and I thought it was perfect. I'll reread it over and over again in my lifetime, and I'll tell children to read it and parents to read it. And I just thought it was such a delight. From beginning to end, I thought it was amazing. I'm in love. And the final book that I'm going to talk about in this video, my favourite book of the year, probably no surprises here, is Howard's End by E.M. Forster. So this is a modern classic set in London in 1910, and it follows most primarily the Schlegel sisters, Margaret and Helen, who come from a very well-educated and progressive family as they befriend the rich business-owning Wilcox family and also the much more poor but intelligent Leonard Bast. This novel was perfect to me on every single level. So on the surface, it's just a very charming and engaging story about all of these very different characters whose paths cross. So we have the Schlegel sisters, who I absolutely love. I love both of them so much. So we have Helen, who is more romantic and extravagant, and then we have Margaret, who's more calm and level-headed. But both of the girls are so intelligent and so strong-willed, and I just love them both. They both love literature and philosophy, and they're both very idealistic in a really admirable way. Through the story, the girls meet the Wilcox family, who are very wealthy and quite materialistic, and they're trying to figure out who will inherit their family home, Howard's End. And the girls also meet Leonard Bast at a music concert, who, because of his social standing, is inescapably distant from the Schlegel sisters, and thus ensues a mass of complex relationships and romance and miscommunication and drama. But there's also just so much more to this novel. Forster is typical for using his characters to represent the social class that they're from, to offer insight and often make political commentary. So in this novel, we have the Wilcoxes, who represent the wealthy and materialistic middle class. We have the Schlegels, who represent the more liberal and idealistic middle class, and then we have Leonard Bast, who represents the more downtrodden workers. Through this structuring, you're really allowed an insight into all of these different families' lifestyles and views and how this all influences them and the relationships that they hold. All of the classes have their virtues, all have their weaknesses. Honestly, this book just had everything that I could have wanted. It has amazing characters that you will learn to love and hate and deeply care about nonetheless. It has beautiful writing and a really fun, engaging storyline and massive social insight. I just love this book so much. It's definitely become a favourite of all time for me, which is amazing. And after loving this so much and also loving A Room with a View by E.M. Forster, which I read last year, E.M. Forster is quickly becoming one of my favourite authors of all time as well. So that is so exciting. I cannot wait to read more of E.M. Forster's work. I would urge all of you to read this. If you love classics and you haven't read it, read it. If you don't read classics but you want to try a classic, read it. I just think it's so special, so perfect, and I'll stop now. So that is it, everyone. Those were my favourite books of the year. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you really enjoyed hearing me gush about all of these books. I'd really love to know what your favourite book of the year was. If you'd like to, let me know down below and then we can talk about them. I would absolutely love that. I'd love to hear about what you're loving, and then if I haven't read them, I can go out and try them. Thank you so much once again for watching, everyone. I really appreciate it. This has been such a great year on BookTube. I'm just loving every second of it, and I just love you all. Thank you so much for commenting on my videos if you do, or just watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you've all had a really great end to the year and you're looking forward to next year. I hope you're all well, and hopefully I will see you soon. Bye everyone.